Hello everyone, Dr. Klein. Welcome to the Posture Report. This is episode 1, and we're going to look at two different posture types that we're going to refer to as active posture types that are going to appear in all the series of the videos that we're looking at here. The idea here is I can't fix lazy, but I can help you with what you're doing wrong. Because a lot of times we're working hard but not smart. So it's just about learning to decompress, but also learning maybe what your bad habits are and maybe how you're holding yourself wrong. Because we have the story of, a gold medalist triathlon sharing the same degenerative breakdowns that someone who's sitting on the couch or has a desk job all the time has. Okay, so, and sometimes even worse, because you're taking poor biomechanics and poor postural patterns and you're out there lifting weights and hitting that treadmill really hard, and that's going to increase degeneration. And that's not what we want. It's not just about building endurance and strength and looking good. It's about making sure our joints are healthy and not just, bringing stability to the spine. But once we have stability in the spine, we have less stress on the nervous system, and all your organs and your tissues are going to work better. So this is one of the best investments you could do for yourself, and it's cheap because you're just taking care of your body from the inside out. You're removing interference so everything can function better. And your pain levels are going to go way down. You're going to feel so much more stable. You're going to be breathing better. So this is the nerdy science behind why foundation training works, why we want spinal stability, and how chiropractic is a tool that can help you get there. But you need to work with chiropractic. If chiropractic hasn't worked for you in the past, because there's no stability. We're not strengthening the muscles we need to. So if there's a tight muscle, there's a weak muscle. We can work that tightness, we can work that joint restriction all we want, but if we don't address the weakness, are we getting anywhere? Probably not. So what is spinal stability? It's less about mobilization and more about strengthening, right? So it's not like yoga where we're trying to get deeper into position. We're actually trying to find that active stretch earlier in a position. And then focusing on breathing. So a lot of times we'll just hold ourselves like, yeah, I'm good breathing, but no, you're breathing from your shoulders. You're not actually challenging any of the joints of your spine. Foundation training, when you'll breathe, you'll feel that stress and all those restrictions. And when we're fighting against restrictions, not only we're breaking that stuff up, but we're strengthening those muscles that do that naturally. So your body will naturally take a better posture. Hips and shoulders work best when they're in the sockets. Very similar joints. And they're a big part of foundation training. We're teaching them to isolate and move without the spine always bending and helping all the time. Picking stuff up or bending from the spine, and it warps and distorts those natural spinal curves that we're supposed to have. And the hips get less and less mobile. And the shoulders, similar problems, right? And a lot of times the shoulders are doing all the work for the breathing. We'll see that in a few of the postures here. And we'll come back to those postures with diaphragm and the pelvic floor and everything, and how pain works and how mechanoreception works. We'll look at all of it. Just the basics here, giving you an overview. So we need to retrain our muscles to support a decompressed stance. That's important. All right. Like we said, can't fix lazy, but can help hard workers work smarter. All right, so the first posture type we're going to look at here is the retraction and sway syndrome, or the runway model posture. You'll notice them because they come out on the catwalk and the hips are very forward. Hips don't line up with the shoulder, and that's a problem for the ball socket joints. It's a problem because your foundation's way in front of your spine. So your spine and your hips aren't able to hold you up as they should, and your shoulder's going to be doing a lot of work in this posture. Let's look at the x-ray first here. So this is your tailbone down here, your sacrum, and the lumbar spine. So we're supposed to have a nice C shape here. So we got a L4, L5 really dipping forward, and then sudden drastic curve back here. A lot of times people lay down with this posture type on the table, and their spine will be super flat. Just feel flat the whole way, and that's not how it's supposed to feel. We're supposed to have some curves in that spine. So we'll have external rotation of the hips. So the hip joint will turn out, and the pelvis shifts forward. So really tight piriformis muscles, probably really tight hamstrings. And the pelvic floor is not going to work so well to support the spine because it's so forward to our center of gravity. So flattening the lumbar spine. It may appear to you, that's why people get confused on these posture types, is like, oh, I'm not that one. Everyone thinks they're that, the next one, the cheerleader posture, which is the lordosis posture. And that's not always true. Vertebral body flexion starting at T12 through T1. So a lot of rounding, but we don't see that rounding in the thoracic spine because we've pushed the hips forward and leaned back. It hides it. But we still have that internal rotation of the shoulders, and the shoulders are still hiked up. It just looks good. And my wife will always tell me that they have bad posture because they look so good. They're so slender and tall. They're going to have a lot of problems, a lot of migraines, a lot of early joint degeneration. And we'll get into that with the topic on nociception because we don't often feel these joints and ligaments and discs degenerating. Only 7% of our nerves feel pain. So let's think about that for a second. So we can have a lot of problems going on that we're not aware of. Usually it will manifest somewhere else. You'll get like numbness and tingling in your fingers. You'll have knee pain. You'll have hip pain. A lot of times it's not the spine. Okay. So some of the symptoms we'll feel here is spasms in the upper trap muscles, holding your body up with your shoulders. Essentially, they're trying to use their shoulders to decompress their spine. I said this is an active posture. They're actively trying to stand correctly, but doing destruction at the same time. Mid-back rhomboids, not as much as the cheerleader sometimes, and a lot of lower back pain. Why? Because these joints are going to get very degenerated because of the hips being forward and all that compression right here. Headaches, that's a given with both these postures. And the next one, extension compression syndrome. So this one we call the cheerleader. So a lot of people understand lower cross syndrome, where the pelvis is very anterior pelvic tilt here. And we'll take another look at what these postures look like in a second, full body. We're just looking at the hips. And lazy posture will look the same way. We'll have the same degenerative breakdown with someone who's not. So this could be like lower cross syndrome, could be, oh, you're lazy, or fancy name is athletic hip. They're actually the same thing, where the quad is overdeveloped, hip flexors are overdeveloped. We got those tight erectors. Maybe they're doing a lot of CrossFit, stuff like that, heavy lifting, playing soccer, something like that. Or it could be lazy, cyclists. So lower cross is often seen. If it's lazy, you'll see it with upper cross syndrome. And that's that rounding with the head forward. So really kind of opposite of each other. So that, what the cheerleader will do, though, is she'll flatten her neck back. So she's very tilted forward, and she'll flatten her back. Neck back and squeeze her shoulder blades back. And that can flatten the neck curve out, and it's going to lead to spasms in your rhomboid muscles. So this one disengages proper diaphragm breathing and proper iliopsoas activation, which is this guy right here. So let's look at myself trying to accommodate. So I'll just tell you right off the bat, I'm used to be this guy for a long time. So that's lower cross syndrome. Pelvic is anterior pelvic tilt, and we're pushing the head back, squeezing the shoulders. Can't really engage the diaphragm well there. But let's start in order here. I'll see this a lot of times. People leaning way back. This is hard for me to do. And this may be a way to know what kind of posture type you are. If it's hard to get into one of these posture types, if it's hard to tilt your pelvis and shift your weight back where your hips are forward, like this way back position, that might indicate that you are the opposite. You are the cheerleader. So this person, posterior pelvic tilt, got to have a flattened spine because the hip, and we always go by this heel, this malleolus, should line up with the rest of the body. You can see the whole ear, shoulder, hip are behind the line. Next one, we have that anterior pelvic tilt and trying to compensate by pushing back. And they kind of look good too. These people say like, oh, you have great posture. That ear, that shoulder line up. That's what we like. Hips kind of line up too. And this kind of lines up. It's not bad according to the standard we're taught. This person can flatten up against the wall usually and look okay. but they're going to have pain and really tight erectors and strange curves in the spine. Here the pelvis is more flattened. We're supposed to have some slight anterior pelvic tilt. So sometimes posterior pelvic tilt isn't necessarily posterior, it's just more level. So the glutes can often engage too much. And again, that shoulder and ear are behind where the hip should be. And this could be pelvic floor issues, where diaphragm issues over here, pelvic floor issues over here. Both are going to have a bit of both problems. And this is me actually, my first attempt trying to go into the sway back position. So the only really problem here is I'm raising my shoulders too much, but this actually kind of eliminated my problem a little bit. The hips are probably a little too forward. Let's look at that line. Not too bad. Hips maybe a little forward. So I was trying to compensate and put myself into a position that was bad, but since I'm already so similar to the cheerleader position, it kind of leveled me out a little bit. So sometimes we have to know what our problem is and kind of push ourselves into that other posture pattern a little bit and then try to lengthen out of it first. So that way we're not lengthening wrong, we're not extending instead of driving straight up. So that's the whole goal of the decompression stance here, is expanding the rib cage without going into extension. So for me, this is the founder notice is always hip hinging. So we're kind of driving those hips back into a hip hinge, not locking the knee out, but enough so we can expand that rib cage without bringing it into extension. Now this looks easy, but a lot of what I'm doing here is really tough. I'm not sure why that picture is so blurry, but opening everything up. And that's the stance we're going to teach you over time, is how to get in the decompression stance before you do the foundation training exercises. And this already starts with a hip hinge to help activate that. So back to the neurology, your posture is a reflection of how your brain is functioning, a picture of your neurological health, neurological state. A lot of the imbalances we'll have just in the side view there can tell us a lot about gut issues you have and other issues you have, breathing issues, and all relates to different diseases you might have. Not just, looking from your back and seeing, okay, one shoulder's higher than the other and all those things. And those will be minimized over time as well. Even if you have something like scoliosis, the more we can teach that spine to be strong in length, and the less gravity is going to affect you. Even if there's some sort of malformation in the spine, we can still strengthen it in that lengthened position. Because otherwise gravity is going to bend you and warp you over time, and then your hips are going to have to try to level you out and all these other distortions. Because I broke both my feet surging on the right, so my body's always compensating a little bit to level me out. All right, and stress is the big thing here. This topic will be throughout everything we're looking at. So the termites of stress, what is attacking your foundation? Some people call this the 3 T's of stress, but I like the idea of termites, eating the wood, foundations being your hips, how we're lifting and driving up. So trauma can be micro trauma or macro trauma. Is it something small over time, or was it a big injury? And then subluxation is areas out in your spine that need to be adjusted chiropractic-wise to bring symmetry to your body, because the more symmetrical you are, the better you'll be able to increase your load tolerances. The CrossFit term, be able to lift up weights, resist gravity, press them, drive them straight up. Whole body exercises are good for that, whereas machines, not so much. And same with yoga, is you've never really taught your body how to hold itself in a stable position, but you're trying to increase motion. The idea of when going into yoga, you need to be stable before you try to get more motion somewhere. All right. So when I go do my functional strength training, I'm working on motion, I'm working on getting stronger, I'm working on my endurance. I'm not going there expecting to be stable. Yes, I'm trying to have good posture, but I know that as soon as I'm adding weights or anything like that, my dominances are going to come out. Toxins, food, everything else, pollution, chemicals, drugs, vaccines, everything we're putting in our body can also lead to stress, and then emotional and mental. So what I'm proposing here is we really need to work on the traumatic. We need to work on limiting micro trauma to our bodies, and even macro trauma. Sometimes people are playing a sport and they get injured and they don't think, oh, wait, I'm just getting old. No, you're not getting old. There's so much imbalance that sets you up for an easy injury. Right? The reason that we go on a roller coaster, as we get older and our neck feels terrible, it's because there's lack of stability and protection. You go in as a kid, there's more balance. You haven't had all that time to let things get worse. So we can get better, we can get more stable, we can balance the muscles, we can strengthen the spine, we can take stress off the nervous system. That's going to lead to less spinal joint rigidity, because arthritis is a self-defense mechanism. Your body is just locking an area down because your muscles aren't doing the job they should be. So your ligaments are like, well, this is going to completely distort our spinal curves, and it's going to start affecting the nerves in the spinal cord, and that's going to shut off innervation to that target organ or that target muscle, and then we're SOL. So we got to lock this down. It is saving your life by doing that. Obviously, it's going to limit your motion. So the idea is, okay, we need to strengthen those muscles, bring balance. We need to then correct the joint. And all these things are connected. Muscle, joint, which is it? It's both. It's always both. There just might be more of one than another. And the light bulb idea was one of the first things I was introduced to in chiropractic was this light bulb that's slowly dimming. Like this light bulb in this room that's really dim. I need to change it, but I don't even notice anymore. It's just so dark. And then you're reading your book and you can barely squint and see it. Put that new light bulb in. It's like, wow. So that's how life is like. These little things, these little imbalances, they're slowly dimming you and slowly draining your energy, and you don't even notice it. You don't remember what it was like to be young and vibrant. So we're going to turn that light bulb back on, or put a new one in, I guess. Unfortunately, we can't just replace our body, so it's a reversal process. It's not going to be as instantaneous as putting in a new light bulb. Unfortunately, I can't do that for you. So this is all based off of thinking of posture and spinal stability as your foundation. A lot of people are like, oh, your gut health's your foundation, all this. So this is my shtick. This is my little platform. I believe movement is so important because we can't digest the food properly if everything's failing, right? If we're constantly stuck in the sympathetic state, fight or flight, your body doesn't care about food, it's caring about that it's dying, all right? So we can't break down food, we don't have good gut motility because how we're moving, we can't eliminate, and we have putrefaction, and the walls of our intestines are breaking down. That doesn't matter what you're eating at that point because how you're holding yourself and how you're breathing and how much stress is on your nerves is more important. Yes, it matters what you eat, but I would like to say that spinal stability is more important. It's going to help chiropractic work for you. It's going to help exercise work for you. It's going to help your diet work for you. Left a pillar open so you can put something else there. And this all leads to better health. A roof. Roof protects you from the storms of disease, right? So spinal abuse, it's a thing. The spine is a breaking point, but more importantly, it gives us warnings. And we'll talk about all these warnings in all these videos. Warnings that our system is failing. So pain is an indicator of stress and nerve pressure. If a joint is being sprained through our normal daily activity, like lifting a box or weight or exercising or sometimes even getting out of the car, it is showing us that we have severe spinal instability. All right, we shouldn't be getting injured that easily. And we can't just look at one bad joint, my bad ankle, bad hip, old injury, and blame everything on that. We need to stabilize the chronic, often silent, insidious injury, the central structure that encases our central nervous system. If it's encasing bone, it's important. Like your skull, it's important. Your spine, it's important. It encases nerve, it protects. It's good for movement, but I would say a more important job is protecting the nerves. And that's the reason it has so many joints and movement is because then it can compensate. If your neck's twisted this way, body wants to keep your eyes level, and it doesn't want that stress on that spinal cord, so the rest of your spine will twist a little bit to ease the pressure. So it's good at doing that. We'll talk more about that in mechanoreception. The other thing is even physical therapists and chiropractors, we get tunnel vision. We're focusing on the diagnosis. We're focusing on the symptomatic area. We're not thinking about how the hip could be related to that knee, or how the spine could be related to that hip. Sometimes how the neck and instability. Like, so many people have lower back pain, and I'm telling you, it's your neck. There's so much imbalance in your neck. It's so tight and restricted. Yes, we need to strengthen the lower back, but the last thing I should be really doing is trying to work heavily on your low back. I need to work on the restriction. That's my job, is work on restriction. Your job is to strengthen and bring stability. I can work on things lightly, and that's, stretching and trying to, but if there's just chronic injury and joints, like your sacroiliac joints, are supposed to be stable and protected, and they're not, and are constantly getting re-injured, there's not much I can do there. It's not so much about putting things in place, because even if I get them in place, there's so much muscular imbalance that they come right back out. I'm going to focus on where you're restricted, and obviously, often it's on the opposite end of the spine. Not always the case, but that is a story. All right, and the bad news here is there's no special magical corrective exercise. Foundation training isn't this special program. What's great about it is it's trying to teach you a principle. And that principle is how to support your spine, how to strengthen it, how to use your hips, and how to use your shoulders correctly. So you could do this with yoga, with CrossFit, even working on machines and being on the treadmill and the elliptical. All these things we can make work for you, but we have to teach you how to hold yourself correctly first and work against your postural patterns. You need to figure out what you're doing wrong. All right. So if we create a firm foundation for our health, that's posture, right? So my story, I'm not going to get into that, but a lot of people know me when I was working back in Pennsylvania. And I've been through some stuff, and you remember me limping around and being in so much pain all the time and just being straight up moody. Okay, so it can happen. You can change rock bottom. And that wasn't just like a year or two. That was going on almost 10 years of really a lot of disability and low quality of life. So you can come back from that, and you can bring stability to places in your body that you thought were hopeless. I didn't imagine that I'd be doing CrossFit now. I didn't think I'd be able to do those heavy lifts and run around and box jump with all the problems that I've had. It's crazy to me, and I'm so blessed to have come this far. So I just want to share that wealth with you, and foundation training is a good way to do that. So hopefully you check out the videos and continue on with this playlist. But we just want to summarize those two posture types, because they're gonna reappear several times here in every video.